Before we begin this story, I want to tell you why Keanu Reeves inspires me so deeply. In a world where fame often hardens people, Keanu remains soft. He rides the subway, he sits on park benches eating sandwiches, he gives up his seat for strangers. He has lost so much in his life, more than most of us could bear, yet he chooses kindness every single day. He doesn't perform goodness for cameras, he lives it in the quiet moments when nobody is watching. That is the rarest kind of strength. Keanu teaches us that humility is not weakness, that grief can make us gentler instead of bitter, and that true power lies in lifting others when you have every reason to fall apart yourself. This story is inspired by that spirit, a reminder that sometimes the smallest act of attention, of presence, of seeing someone truly, can change everything. Now let me take you into a moment that nobody expected, a night when kindness arrived exactly when it was needed most. The story begins. The air in the dressing room felt thicker than it should have been, as if something invisible had shifted and settled into the corners where the light didn't quite reach. Jimmy sat perfectly still in front of the mirror, his reflection staring back at him with eyes he barely recognized anymore. The makeup was flawless, the hair perfect, the smile practiced and ready, but underneath all of it something was crumbling so quietly he wondered if anyone else could hear it. His chest felt tight in a way that had nothing to do with breathing, and everything to do with the weight of words he couldn't say, and a truth he had been running from for 3 weeks now. Outside the door he could hear the familiar chaos of a live show preparing to begin, voices calling out cues, footsteps rushing past, laughter from the crew, all of it blending into a noise that used to comfort him but now felt like static. He looked down at his phone resting on the makeup counter, the screen dark but somehow still screaming at him with the message he had read 47 times since this morning. His sister's words were burned into his mind now, every letter a small knife. "Mom's asking for you again, Jimmy. She says she needs to tell you something important before it's too late. Please don't wait. Please just come home." He had not gone home. He had not called. He had done what he always did when life became too real and too painful. He had put on the mask and showed up to make other people laugh. 23 years of this, 23 years of being the guy who could make any moment lighter, any guest more comfortable, any audience happier, and now he sat here wondering if he had forgotten how to be real at all. The knock on the door made him flinch, a sharp sound that pulled him back from wherever his mind had been sinking. "Come in," he said, and his voice sounded normal, bright even, a magic trick he had perfected without meaning to. Sarah poked her head in, his producer and closest work friend, her eyes scanning him the way they always did before a show. "You good, Jimmy? We're at 15 minutes and Keanu just arrived. He's asking if you need anything." Keanu Reeves, tonight's guest. The interview Jimmy had been looking forward to for weeks back when the world still made sense, back before his mother's doctor had used words like stage 4 and limited time and making peace. Jimmy felt a strange pang of guilt, as if his personal collapse was somehow disrespectful to a man who had survived more loss than most people could imagine and still showed up with grace. "I'm good, Sarah. Tell him I'll see him out there," Jimmy said, flashing the smile that had become as automatic as breathing. Sarah hesitated, her hand still on the doorframe, her face doing that thing it did when she wanted to say something real but didn't know if she should. "You sure? Because you seem, I don't know, off lately." Off, such a small word for the way his entire world was falling apart in slow motion. Jimmy wanted to tell her everything, wanted to let the dam break and admit that he was terrified and heartbroken and drowning in regret. But instead he just laughed, that easy familiar sound that made everyone relax. "I'm fine, Sarah, just tired, you know how it is." She nodded slowly, not quite convinced but too busy to push, "Okay, but if you need anything," and then she was gone, the door clicking shut behind her, leaving Jimmy alone again with his reflection and his phone and the silence that felt like it was swallowing him whole. He stood up, straightened his tie, rolled his shoulders back, and became Jimmy Fallon, the person the world expected to see. The walk from the dressing room to the stage was muscle memory now. Smile at the crew, high-five the stage manager, wave at the band, every step a performance he could do in his sleep. The studio audience was already buzzing with energy, 300 people who had waited hours for this, who needed him to be exactly who they came to see. But as Jimmy took his position behind the curtain, waiting for his cue, something unexpected happened. He glanced toward the green room area and saw Keanu standing there, not looking at his phone or talking to anyone, just standing quietly and watching. Their eyes met for less than 2 seconds, but in that brief moment, Jimmy felt something he couldn't name, a flicker of recognition, as if Keanu could see past every layer of performance straight through to the breaking underneath. Keanu didn't smile or wave. He simply nodded once, a tiny gesture that somehow felt like an anchor. And now, ladies and gentlemen, Jimmy Fallon, the announcer's voice boomed. The curtain pulled back, the lights blazed hot and bright, and Jimmy ran out into the applause wearing someone else's joy like a costume. The audience roared, the music swelled, and he launched into his monologue with the energy of a man who had nothing wrong in his life at all. Joke after joke landed perfectly, the laughter rolled in waves, and for 8 minutes he was exactly who he was supposed to be. But when he introduced Keanu and watched him walk out with that quiet, humble presence, when they shook hands and sat down across from each other, Jimmy felt it again, that strange sense that Keanu was looking at him differently than other guests did. Not at Jimmy Fallon the host, but at the person barely holding himself together beneath the performance. They started the interview talking about Keanu's new film, the usual banter and stories, but halfway through a question about motorcycles, Keanu did something that stopped Jimmy cold. He leaned forward slightly and asked, "Are you okay, Jimmy, really okay?" The audience laughed nervously, thinking it was part of a bit, but Keanu's eyes were serious and soft and completely genuine. Jimmy's prepared response died in his throat. His smile flickered for just a fraction of a second, and in that tiny crack something shifted. The studio suddenly felt too bright, too loud, too full of people watching, and Jimmy realized with creeping horror that he might not be able to hold this together after all. He opened his mouth to deflect with a joke, but what came out instead was silence. The silence lasted maybe 3 seconds, but it felt like standing on the edge of a cliff with the ground crumbling beneath his feet. Jimmy could hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears, could feel 300 pairs of eyes waiting for him to do what he always did, turn the moment into laughter, make it light, make it safe. But Keanu's question hung in the air between them like something solid and unmovable. And for the first time in his career, Jimmy Fallon did not know how to perform his way out of the truth. He started, then stopped, his voice catching on something sharp in his throat. Keanu did not look away, did not smile to let him off the hook, did not do any of the things guests usually did to smooth over an awkward moment. Instead, he just sat there with infinite patience, his whole body language saying, "Take your time, I'm here, I'm listening." The audience had gone quiet now, the laughter fading into confused murmurs, people sensing that something real and unscripted was happening but not quite understanding what. Jimmy felt his hands start to tremble and he pressed them flat against his desk, the cool surface grounding him just enough to pull himself back from whatever edge he had been teetering on. He forced a laugh, smaller and less convincing than usual, and shook his head. "Sorry, man, long week, you know how it is." But Keanu tilted his head slightly, his dark eyes steady and kind, and said very quietly, "I do know how it is, and that's why I'm asking." Something in Jimmy's chest cracked a little more. He glanced toward the cameras, toward Sarah standing in the wings with her headset on looking concerned, toward the audience waiting for him to steer this back to normal, and he made a choice he would think about for years afterward. He cleared his throat and pivoted hard into a story about his kids, something funny and sweet and completely safe, and the audience relaxed and laughed right on cue. Keanu let him do it, didn't push, just sat back and played along with the rest of the interview like the moment had never happened. But when the cameras cut for commercial break and the audience chatter rose around them, Keanu leaned in close and said just loud enough for Jimmy to hear, "I'll be here after the show if you want to talk. No cameras, no performance, just 2 people." Jimmy nodded without really meaning to, his throat too tight to answer, and then they were live again, and he was introducing the next segment, and everything kept moving forward the way it always did. The rest of the show passed in a blur of games and bits and musical guests, Jimmy running on autopilot while his mind spun in circles. When the final credits rolled and the audience filed out still buzzing with energy, he felt exhausted in a way that sleep could never fix. He made it back to his dressing room and closed the door, leaning against it with his eyes shut. His phone buzzed in his pocket, and he already knew before looking that it would be his sister again, or maybe his wife asking if he had decided anything yet about going home. He pulled out the phone and saw both, 3 texts from his sister and 2 missed calls from his wife, and a voicemail from a number he recognized as his childhood area code. His mother's hospital, probably. His hands shook as he put the phone face down on the counter, unable to look at it anymore. There was a soft knock, different from the usual rushed banging of crew members, and Jimmy knew somehow that it was Keanu. "Come in," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Keanu entered quietly, closing the door behind him with care. He had changed out of his jacket and looked somehow smaller and more human in just a dark shirt and jeans, his whole presence calm and unhurried. He didn't say anything at first, just pulled up the spare chair and sat down a few feet away, not crowding, not demanding, just there. "You don't have to do this," Jimmy said, trying to inject some lightness into his tone. "I'm fine, really, just a weird moment out there." Keanu was quiet for a long moment, his hands folded loosely in his lap, his face thoughtful. Then he said, "About 15 years ago, I had a moment kind of like the one you just had, where someone asked if I was okay, and I couldn't remember the last time anyone had really asked, or the last time I had answered honestly." Jimmy looked up despite himself, meeting Keanu's eyes. "I was not okay," Keanu continued, his voice low and even. "I had lost people I loved, I was angry at the universe, and I was doing exactly what you're doing right now, showing up and performing and pretending that if I kept moving fast enough the grief couldn't catch me." The words hit Jimmy like a gentle punch to the chest. He opened his mouth to deflect again, but what came out instead was the truth, raw and unfiltered. "My mom is dying." Keanu nodded slowly, no shock or pity in his expression, just understanding. "And I haven't gone to see her," Jimmy continued, the words spilling out now like water through a broken dam. "She's been asking for me for 3 weeks, and I keep making excuses because years ago we had this fight, this stupid, pointless fight about my career and my choices, and we never really fixed it. We just pretended it didn't happen, and now she says she has something important to tell me before. He couldn't finish the sentence. "Before she dies," Keanu finished gently. Jimmy nodded, his eyes burning. "I'm terrified," he whispered. "I'm terrified she wants to forgive me or tell me she's proud of me, and I don't. I don't think I can handle that. I don't think I deserve it." Keanu leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his whole attention focused on Jimmy with an intensity that somehow felt comforting instead of overwhelming. "Can I tell you what I learned the hard way?" he said. Jimmy nodded, not trusting his voice. "The people we love don't need us to be perfect before we show up for them," Keanu said quietly. "They just need us to show up. Your mom doesn't want your performance, Jimmy. She's had that your whole life. She wants you, the real you, scared and imperfect and human." "But what if I fall apart?" Jimmy said, his voice cracking. "What if I can't hold it together?" "Then you fall apart," Keanu said simply. "And the people who love you will be there to help you put the pieces back together. That's what love is." Jimmy felt something break loose in his chest, some terrible tight knot he had been carrying for so long he had forgotten it was there. A sob escaped before he could stop it, then another, and suddenly he was crying in a way he had not let himself cry since he was a child, his whole body shaking with the force of it. Keanu didn't move to comfort him or tell him to stop. He just sat there steady and present, a quiet anchor in the storm. When Jimmy finally got himself under control, wiping his face with his hands, he felt hollowed out but somehow lighter. "I don't know if I can do this," he said hoarsely. "You can," Keanu said with absolute certainty, "and you don't have to do it alone." Jimmy looked at him, this man who was essentially a stranger but who had somehow seen straight through to the heart of his pain and met it with nothing but kindness. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. "Why do you care?" Keanu smiled, a small, sad smile that carried the weight of his own losses. "Because someone did it for me once when I needed it most, and the only way to honor that kind of grace is to pass it forward." There was a long pause, and then Keanu said something that would change everything. "I'm going to make you a deal, Jimmy. Tomorrow you're going to get on a plane and go see your mother, and I'm going to cover your show." Jimmy blinked, certain he had heard wrong. "What?" "You heard me," Keanu said calmly. "Call Sarah right now, tell her you have a family emergency, tell her I've volunteered to guest host tomorrow's episode. She can make it work." "You can't just," Jimmy started, but Keanu held up a hand. "I can and I will," he said firmly. "This is not a debate, Jimmy. This is what's going to happen. You're going to go be with your mom, and I'm going to sit at your desk and figure out how to interview celebrities. How hard can it be?" Despite everything, Jimmy laughed, a wet, broken sound. "You're insane." "Maybe," Keanu said with a slight grin, "but I'm also right, and you know it." Jimmy stared at him, this impossible, generous, strange man, and felt something shift deep inside. But there was still one problem, one fear he hadn't voiced yet. "What if," he said slowly, "what if I go there and she tells me whatever she needs to tell me, and then I lose her and I never get to?" Then you'll have been there, Keanu interrupted gently. You'll have shown up. You'll have been brave enough to receive whatever she wants to give you, and that matters, Jimmy. That matters more than you know. Jimmy took a shaky breath and pulled out his phone. His hand hovered over Sarah's contact for a long moment, and then he made a choice. He pressed call. Sarah picked up on the second ring, her voice already tense with the controlled urgency of someone who had 17 things happening at once. Jimmy, what's up? I'm dealing with tomorrow's booking change because the actress just canceled, and we need to. Sarah, I need tomorrow off, Jimmy said, the words coming out stronger than he expected. The line went silent for 3 full seconds. What she finally said, her tone somewhere between confusion and disbelief. Jimmy, you've never taken a sick day in 23 years. What are you talking about? It's my mom, he said quietly, and just saying it out loud made it real in a way it hadn't been before. She's dying, Sarah, and I need to go home. I need to go now. He heard her sharp intake of breath, heard the shuffle of papers stopping, heard her step away from wherever she had been standing. Oh God, Jimmy, I didn't know, of course, yes. Take whatever time you need, we'll figure it out. Keanu's going to cover for me, Jimmy said, glancing at Keanu who sat watching him with calm encouragement. Keanu, Sarah repeated slowly. Keanu Reeves, our guest from tonight, that Keanu. He offered, Jimmy said. He's sitting right here, he offered to guest host so I can go. There was another pause and Jimmy could practically hear Sarah's brain working through the logistics, the impossibility, the insurance issues, the network approvals. Then she surprised him. Okay, she said simply. Okay, if that's what needs to happen, then we make it happen. Let me put him on. Jimmy handed his phone to Keanu, who took it with an easy smile. Hello, Sarah. Yes, it's really me. Listen, I know this is unconventional, but Jimmy needs to be with his family, and I have a completely empty day tomorrow, so let's make this work. Jimmy watched as Keanu listened, nodding occasionally, his responses calm and practical. I can be there at 7 a.m. for prep. Yes, I understand the legal paperwork. No, I don't need payment. Donate my appearance fee to whatever charity Jimmy chooses. Honestly, Sarah, this doesn't need to be complicated. I'm just keeping a seat warm for a friend. Friend, the word settled into Jimmy's chest with unexpected weight. They barely knew each other, really, had done maybe 5 interviews over the years, surface-level celebrity conversations, and yet here Keanu was rearranging his life like it was the most natural thing in the world. Keanu handed the phone back. She wants you again. Jimmy, Sarah's voice was softer now, warmer. Go be with your mom, don't think about the show, don't think about anything except being there, we've got this. Thank you, Jimmy whispered. And Jimmy, she added, I'm really glad Keanu asked if you were okay tonight. I should have asked weeks ago, I'm sorry. You couldn't have known, he said. I could have paid attention, she replied. That's what I'm sorry for. After he hung up, Jimmy sat staring at his phone, feeling like the ground had shifted beneath him. Keanu stood and stretched. So when's the first flight to New Hampshire? There's one at 6 a.m. from LaGuardia, Jimmy said automatically, then realized what he was saying. Wait, you're really doing this? I'm really doing this, Keanu confirmed. Now let's get you home so you can pack. The drive through late-night New York felt surreal, Keanu insisting on sharing Jimmy's car, the city lights streaking past the windows in blurs of gold and white. They didn't talk much, but the silence felt comfortable, purposeful. When they pulled up to Jimmy's building, Keanu turned to him. Hey, he said gently. When you see her tomorrow, don't rehearse what you're going to say, don't plan it out, just be there and let whatever needs to happen happen. Jimmy nodded, his throat tight again. And Jimmy, Keanu added, whatever she tells you, whatever truth she's been holding, receive it as a gift even if it's hard to hear, especially if it's hard to hear. People at the end of their lives don't waste words on things that don't matter. How do you know so much about this? Jimmy asked quietly. Because I've sat at too many bedsides, Keanu said, his eyes distant for a moment. And the thing I learned is that the people leaving aren't afraid of death. They're afraid of leaving things unsaid. Let her say what she needs to say. Jimmy felt tears pressing again, but he held them back. Thank you, Keanu. I don't know how to. You don't need to thank me, Keanu interrupted with a slight smile. Just go love your mom. Jimmy climbed out of the car and watched it pull away, standing alone on the sidewalk feeling like he had lived 3 lifetimes in one night. Upstairs, his wife was waiting, and when he told her what had happened, what Keanu had done, She cried and held him and helped him pack a small bag while their daughters slept unaware in the next room. He barely slept that night, lying in the dark thinking about his mother, about the fight they had 8 years ago when she told him he was losing himself in his career, and he had accused her of not understanding his life. They had apologized eventually, surface words that smoothed things over but never quite healed the wound underneath. And now, she was in a hospital bed with something important to tell him, and he had no idea what it could be. At 4:30 a.m., he gave up on sleep and got dressed. His wife drove him to the airport through empty pre-dawn streets, holding his hand at red lights, not needing to fill the silence with words. At the departure drop-off, she kissed him and said, "Your mom loves you, Jimmy. Whatever she needs to say comes from that love, remember that." The flight was half empty, business travelers and insomniacs, and Jimmy sat by the window watching the sun rise over the clouds and trying not to think too hard about what waited for him. His phone buzzed with a text from Keanu. "At the studio, they're teaching me how to read the teleprompter. This is harder than fighting stunt coordinators. You owe me." Despite everything, Jimmy smiled. Then another text came through. "Seriously, though, you're doing the right thing. Be present, be open, be brave." The plane landed at 9:17 a.m., and Jimmy rented a car with shaking hands. The drive to the hospital took 40 minutes through the small towns and autumn trees of his childhood, every mile feeling like moving backward and forward through time simultaneously. He had not been home in almost 2 years, had made excuses about schedules and commitments, and now the familiar roads felt like accusations. The hospital was small and local, the kind where everyone knew everyone. He parked and sat in the car for 5 full minutes, his hands gripping the steering wheel, his heart hammering. Through the windshield, he could see the third-floor window that his sister had told him was their mother's room. His phone rang. His sister. "He's here," she said without preamble. "Mom's awake, she's lucid, she's asking for you right now, Jimmy." "I'm in the parking lot," he said. "Then get up here," his sister said, her voice breaking. "Please hurry." He walked through the automatic doors, took the elevator to the 3rd floor, followed the room numbers down a hallway that smelled like antiseptic and recycled air. Outside room 312, he stopped, his hand on the door handle, paralyzed. From inside, he heard his mother's voice, weak but unmistakable, talking to his sister. "Is he coming? I need to tell him. I need him to know before." "Know what, Mom?" his sister asked gently. "The truth," his mother said, "the truth about his father." Jimmy's blood turned to ice. His father had died when Jimmy was 19, a heart attack, sudden and devastating. What truth could there possibly be? He pushed open the door. His mother turned her head on the pillow, her face thin and pale but her eyes sharp and present. "Oh, Jimmy," she whispered. "Oh, sweetheart, you came." He crossed to her bedside, took her hand, felt how small and fragile it had become. "I'm here, Mom. I'm so sorry I didn't come sooner." She squeezed his hand with surprising strength. "Sit down, baby. There's something I should have told you years ago, something about your father and why I got so upset about your career." Jimmy sat, his whole body tense. His mother took a breath that rattled in her chest. "Your father had a dream too," she said quietly. "Before you were born, before everything, he wanted to be a musician." Jimmy blinked, confused. Dad was an accountant. He was, his mother agreed, but he didn't start out that way. Jimmy stared at his mother, trying to reconcile the father he had known, the quiet man with the briefcase and the weekend yard work, with the word musician. His sister looked equally stunned, standing frozen by the window. "Your father played piano," his mother continued, her voice soft with memory. "He was beautiful at it, Jimmy, the kind of talented that makes people stop and listen. He had scholarships. He had opportunities. People told him he could really make something of himself." "So what happened?" Jimmy asked, his voice barely above a whisper. His mother's eyes grew distant, looking at something decades in the past. "Life happened," she said. "His own father, your grandfather, told him music was a waste of time, a child's fantasy, that real men had real jobs and supported their families with steady paychecks, not pipe dreams." Jimmy felt something cold settle in his stomach. "Your father was 22 when his father gave him an ultimatum," his mother said. "Give up the music and come work at the accounting firm, or give up the family." And your father, he was softer than people knew. He couldn't bear the idea of losing his parents' love. She paused to catch her breath, and Jimmy's sister moved to adjust her pillow, her own eyes wet with tears. "So he gave it up," his mother continued. He put away the piano, he took the job, he did everything right according to everyone else's definition of right. And then he met me and we fell in love and had you and your sister, and he was a good father, Jimmy. He was so good. I know he was, Jimmy said, his throat tight. But he was also heartbroken, his mother said, and this is the part I should have told you years ago, the part I was too proud or too scared to say. She looked directly at Jimmy now, her eyes clear and urgent. Your father never stopped missing it. The music, the dream, the person he might have been. I would catch him sometimes late at night just sitting in the dark, and I knew he was thinking about all the roads he didn't take. Jimmy felt tears sliding down his face. And then you came along, his mother said, her voice warming slightly. And you were so bright, Jimmy, so funny, so full of life and energy. And when you told us you wanted to do comedy, wanted to perform, wanted to take that risk, your father, she paused. He was terrified. Terrified, Jimmy repeated. Not of you failing, his mother said quickly. Of you succeeding, of you actually getting to live the dream he had given up. He was terrified you would choose the performance over the people you loved, that you would sacrifice everything for the career and end up alone. But he supported me, Jimmy said, confused. He came to my shows, he was proud. He was proud, his mother agreed. But he was also scared, and when he died so suddenly, so young, I inherited that fear, Jimmy. I carried it for him. The hospital room felt too small, too bright. The machines beeping steadily in the background like a countdown to something inevitable. 8 years ago when we had that fight, his mother said. When I told you that you were losing yourself in your career, what I was really saying was don't make your father's mistake in reverse. Don't choose the dream over the people. Don't end up at the end of your life wondering if all the applause was worth the loneliness. But I'm not lonely, Jimmy said. I have a wife, I have kids, I have. Do you have yourself? His mother interrupted gently. Or have you become so good at being what everyone else needs that you've forgotten who you are when no one's watching? The question hit him like a physical blow. He thought about the past 3 weeks, how he had kept doing show after show instead of coming home, how he had chosen the performance over the presence, how he had been so terrified of being real that he had almost missed this moment entirely. Mom, he started, but she squeezed his hand. I'm not telling you this to hurt you, baby, she said. I'm telling you because I'm dying and I will not leave this world without saying the thing your father never got to say. That life is not about choosing between your dreams and your people. It's about learning that your dreams mean nothing if you have no one to share them with. Jimmy bent forward, his forehead resting on their joined hands, his whole body shaking with sobs he had held back for weeks, months, maybe years. His sister moved closer, her hand on his shoulder, and his mother reached up with her other hand to touch his hair the way she had when he was small. I forgive you for not coming sooner, his mother whispered. But more importantly, Jimmy, I need you to forgive yourself, and I need you to hear what I'm really saying. Jimmy lifted his head, his face wet, his eyes meeting hers. You are enough, she said clearly, each word deliberate. Not Jimmy Fallon the host, not the performer, not the guy who makes everyone laugh, just you, the boy I raised, the man you became, the person underneath all of that. You are enough exactly as you are. The words broke something open in him, some deep buried belief that he had been carrying his entire adult life without realizing it. The idea that he had to earn love through performance, that his value was measured in laughs and ratings, and how well he could hide his pain. I thought, he said through tears, I thought you needed me to be strong. Oh, sweetheart, his mother said, her own eyes filling. The strongest thing you can be is honest. His sister was crying now too, and the three of them sat together in that small hospital room while machines beeped and fluorescent lights hummed, and the world outside continued on without them. Time felt strange, both too fast and too slow, and Jimmy realized that this was the moment Keanu had been trying to give him. This exact moment of truth and presence and terrible, beautiful honesty. His phone buzzed in his pocket and he ignored it, but it buzzed again, insistent. His sister glanced at him. You can check it, she said. Mom needs to rest anyway. Jimmy pulled out his phone and saw text from Sarah. You need to see this, the first one said. The second was a link to a live stream with the caption, Keanu Reeves is hosting The Tonight Show, and it's the most beautiful disaster I've ever seen. Despite everything, Jimmy almost laughed. His mother smiled weakly. Is that your friend, the one who gave you his day so you could be here? Yeah, Jimmy said, Keanu Reeves. I always liked him, his mother said. Something kind in his eyes, you can tell he's known real loss. Yeah, Jimmy said quietly, he has. His mother's eyes were starting to close, exhaustion taking over. Go watch your show, she murmured. I'm not going anywhere today, we have more time. You promise, Jimmy asked, and he felt like a child again. I promise, she said. Tomorrow we'll talk about your father's music. I have recordings you've never heard. Jimmy kissed her forehead and stepped into the hallway with his sister, both of them emotionally wrung out. His sister pulled out her own phone and opened the live stream of the Tonight Show, and what Jimmy saw made his heart clench with something between gratitude and awe. Keanu sat at Jimmy's desk looking slightly uncomfortable but genuine, talking to the audience with complete honesty. So I've never done this before, Keanu was saying on the screen. And Jimmy is dealing with something really important with his family, and the reason I'm here is because sometimes the bravest thing we can do is admit we need help. The audience was silent, hanging on every word. We live in a world that tells us to push through, to be strong, to never show weakness, Keanu continued. But Jimmy taught me something last night. He taught me that asking for help is not weakness. Showing up for the people you love even when you're scared is not weakness. Being human is not weakness. Jimmy watched, transfixed. So tonight's show is going to be a little different, Keanu said. I'm going to try my best to interview some folks and probably mess up the games, but more importantly, I want to talk about something we don't talk about enough, which is that it's okay to not be okay, and it's okay to let people see that. The audience started clapping, a slow build that grew into something powerful. Jimmy's sister looked at him with wonder. Who is this guy? Someone who gets it, Jimmy whispered. And then Keanu said something that made Jimmy's breath catch. Jimmy, if you're watching this, your mom is lucky to have you there, and we're all sending love. The camera cut to the audience and crew, all of them waving at the camera, and Jimmy realized that somehow in trying to hide his pain, he had forgotten the basic truth that Keanu seemed to understand instinctively. That vulnerability didn't push people away. It brought them closer. His phone rang. It was Keanu. Jimmy stepped further down the hospital corridor, his sister giving him space as he answered the call. His hand trembled slightly as he lifted the phone to his ear. Hey, Keanu's voice came through, calm and warm despite the chaos Jimmy could hear in the background. I have about 3 minutes before I'm supposed to interview someone. I have no idea who, but I wanted to check in. How is she? Jimmy leaned against the wall, the cool surface grounding him. He paused, searching for words. She told me something about my dad, something I never knew, and it explained so much. Keanu, it explained everything. Do you want to talk about it? Keanu asked, and Jimmy could hear the genuine care in his voice, not polite interest but real attention. My dad had dreams he gave up, Jimmy said quietly. Music, performance, he sacrificed it all because his own father told him to choose security over passion. And then I came along wanting to perform, and it terrified him, terrified my mom, because they were afraid I would lose myself. And now you understand why your mom reacted the way she did, Keanu said gently. Yeah, Jimmy whispered. She wasn't trying to hurt me 8 years ago. She was trying to protect me from becoming so consumed by the dream that I forgot to actually live. There was a brief pause, and Jimmy heard someone calling Keanu's name in the background, urgent but respectful. He heard Keanu say, "Hold on one moment, please." Then Keanu was back. Jimmy, I have to go pretend I know what I'm doing here, but listen to me. What your mom gave you today was not just an explanation, it was permission. Permission for what? Jimmy asked. Permission to be whole, Keanu said. Permission to be both the performer and the person, to have the career and the connections, to succeed without sacrificing. You don't have to choose anymore. Jimmy felt fresh tears pressing at his eyes. How do you always know exactly what to say? Because I spent years getting it wrong, Keanu replied with a soft laugh. Now go be with your family. I'll call you tonight after this beautiful disaster of a show. Keanu, Jimmy said quickly before he could hang up. Thank you, not just for today, but for seeing me, really seeing me. We see each other, Jimmy, Keanu said simply. That's what this is. The line went quiet, and Jimmy stood in the empty hallway feeling like something fundamental had shifted in his understanding of the world. His sister appeared beside him, 2 cups of terrible hospital coffee in her hands. She offered him one. Mom's sleeping, she said. The nurse says she'll be out for a few hours. The meds make her tired. They found a small waiting room, empty except for old magazines and furniture that had seen better decades. Jimmy and his sister sat together, and for the first time in years they really talked. She told him about the past 3 weeks, about sitting with their mother through treatments and bad news and moments of clarity. She told him about their mother asking for him every single day, not with anger but with longing. "She was never mad at you, Jimmy," his sister said. "She was scared for you, there's a difference." "I know that now," Jimmy said. "I just wish I had known it sooner." His sister smiled sadly. "That's the thing about family stuff. We're all just doing our best with broken information and inherited fears. Dad was scared, so Mom was scared, so you were scared. It's fear all the way down until someone is brave enough to tell the truth." "Mom was brave today," Jimmy said. "And so were you," his sister countered. "You came, you listened, you didn't run. That's brave, Jimmy." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, and then his sister pulled out her phone and replayed parts of Keanu's show. It was genuinely chaotic, Keanu fumbling through segments with endearing awkwardness, but there was something beautiful about it, too. He was so honest about not knowing what he was doing, so willing to laugh at himself, so present with each guest even when the interviews went off script. At one point, a young actress asked him how he stayed so grounded in Hollywood, and Keanu's answer made Jimmy's chest tighten. "I stay grounded by remembering that fame is not real but kindness is," he said. "I stay grounded by riding the subway and talking to strangers, and remembering that every single person has a story as complex as mine. I stay grounded by showing up for people when they need it because people showed up for me." The audience had gone completely silent, absorbed. "And today I'm here because my friend needed someone to keep his seat warm," Keanu continued. "And that matters more than any movie I could be promoting or anything else I could be doing. We have to show up for each other. That's the whole point of being human." Jimmy watched his sister wipe her eyes. "I like him," she said. "He's weird, but I like him." "Me too," Jimmy said. His phone buzzed with a text from his wife, a photo of their daughters holding a sign that said, "We love you, Daddy and Grandma." His heart ached with how much he missed them, but for the first time in weeks, the ache felt clean instead of complicated. Another text came through, this one from Sarah. "Jimmy, you need to see the numbers. Keanu's episode is trending everywhere. People are calling it the most honest thing they've seen on television." Then another text. "But that's not why I'm texting. I'm texting because what he said about showing up for people made me think about how we run this show, how we run our lives. I think we all needed this." Jimmy typed back, "He has a way of making you rethink everything, doesn't he?" Sarah's response was immediate. "He's doing a second night tomorrow if you need more time," he already offered. Jimmy felt overwhelmed by the generosity, by the kindness of people rallying around him in his crisis. He had spent so long believing he had to be strong alone, had to hold everything together by himself, and here was proof that vulnerability could create connection instead of destroying it. His sister's phone rang and she stepped out to take it, leaving Jimmy alone with his thoughts. He opened his notes app and started writing, not for the show but for himself, trying to capture what he was learning before it slipped away. He wrote about his father's lost dreams and his mother's protective fear. He wrote about Keanu's unexpected friendship and the way presence mattered more than perfection. He wrote about his daughters and his wife and how he wanted to be different, wanted to be whole. When his sister returned, her face was strange, caught between concern and something else. "That was the nurse," she said. "Mom's awake and she's asking for both of us. She says she wants to play us something." "Something," Jimmy repeated. "Dad's music," his sister said quietly. "She had them bring a laptop. She has recordings." They walked back to their mother's room together, and when they entered, they found her sitting up slightly, looking tired but determined. A nurse had set up a small laptop on the bedside table. "Come here, my loves," their mother said, her voice stronger than before. "I want you to hear your father the way I first heard him, before life got complicated, before fear took over." She pressed play and the room filled with the sound of piano, beautiful and haunting, and played with the kind of feeling that only came from true passion. It was a recording from decades ago, the quality poor but the emotion undeniable. Jimmy listened to his father, this man he thought he knew, pouring his soul into music, and understood for the first time the depth of what had been lost. When the recording ended, all three of them were crying. "This is who he was," their mother said softly, "before he became who he thought he had to be." She looked at Jimmy with fierce intensity. Don't let that happen to you, baby. Don't wait until the end to tell the people you love that you needed them, that you were scared, that you were human. I won't, Jimmy promised. I swear I won't. His mother smiled and closed her eyes, exhausted by the emotion. The nurse suggested they let her rest, and Jimmy and his sister stepped back into the hallway. His phone buzzed again. It was Keanu. Show's over. How are you holding up? Jimmy typed back, I just heard my father's music for the first time. He paused. I'm different than I was this morning. Keanu's response came quickly. Different how? Different better, Jimmy wrote. Ready to be more honest, more present, more human. The three dots appeared showing Keanu was typing, then his message came through. That's all any of us can do, proud of you, Jimmy. Jimmy was about to respond when his sister gasped. He looked up and saw nurses rushing into their mother's room, saw machines beeping urgently, saw the calm professionalism that meant something was very wrong. The next 30 seconds stretched like hours. Jimmy and his sister pressed against the wall as medical staff flowed into their mother's room with practiced urgency. Jimmy's heart hammered so hard he could feel it in his throat, could taste metal on his tongue, could hear nothing but the terrible symphony of machines and voices speaking in medical code he didn't understand. Then the doctor emerged, her face calm, and Jimmy knew before she spoke that it wasn't the end, not yet. She stabilized, the doctor said. Her blood pressure dropped suddenly, but we've got it under control. This happens sometimes with the medications, but I need you both to understand we're entering a different phase now. How long, his sister asked, her voice steady in the way it got when she was barely holding on. Days, the doctor said gently. Maybe a week, she's fighting, but her body is tired. Jimmy felt the floor shift beneath him, felt time reorganize itself around this new reality. Can we see her? She's asking for you, the doctor said. She's very clear about wanting to talk to you both. They entered the room to find their mother looking smaller somehow, as if the episode had taken something from her, but her eyes were bright and focused. She reached for their hands. I'm not scared, she said before either of them could speak. I need you to know that I'm not scared of what's coming. Mom, Jimmy's sister, started, but their mother shook her head. Let me say this while I can, she said. Jimmy, I watched that man on your show tonight. I watched him be vulnerable and honest and awkward and real, and I realized that's what I want for you, not the perfection you've been chasing, but the messiness of being human. Jimmy squeezed her hand, unable to speak. I want you to go back to your show, she continued. But I want you to go back different. I want you to take what that kind man gave you tonight, that permission to be real, and I want you to give it to others. What if I'm not ready? Jimmy whispered. Then you'll learn by doing, his mother said. That's how all the important things work. You learn by doing, by failing, by trying again. She turned to his sister. And you, my strong girl, I want you to help your brother remember how to be a person, not just a performer. His sister nodded through tears. Now I want you both to do something for me, their mother said. I want you to call your families. I want this room full of life and noise and children. I want to hear my granddaughters laugh. I want to see all of you together while I can still see. Jimmy pulled out his phone with shaking hands and called his wife. She answered on the first ring. Bring the girls, he said. Mom wants everyone here. We're already in the car, his wife said. We started driving when Keanu called us an hour ago. Keanu called you, Jimmy said, stunned. He said family needed to be together, his wife said. He arranged a hotel, he thought of everything, Jimmy. Jimmy felt something crack open in his chest, a warmth spreading through the cold fear. His sister was making her own calls, and within the hour the small hospital room was transforming. His daughters arrived first, bursting through the door with the fearless energy of children, immediately climbing onto their grandmother's bed with careful enthusiasm. Grandma, you look tired, his youngest said with 5-year-old honesty. I am tired, sweetheart, their grandmother said, but seeing you gives me energy. His wife embraced him in the hallway, holding him tight. Keanu told me what he did, she whispered. The show, everything, Jimmy, that kind of friendship is rare. I barely know him, Jimmy said, bewildered. Maybe that's not what matters, his wife said. Maybe what matters is that he saw you needed help and he helped. Over the next 3 days, the hospital room became something else entirely. Jimmy's family created a rotation, someone always there, and his mother held court from her bed like she had when they were young, telling stories, sharing memories, laughing at her granddaughter's performances. Jimmy broadcast his show from his phone for 5 minutes each night, just checking in, being honest about where he was and why. The response was overwhelming. Thousands of messages poured in from viewers sharing their own stories of family, of loss, of regret, of reconciliation. Keanu continued hosting with a rotating series of co-hosts, turning The Tonight Show into something it had never been before, a space for real conversation about real things. On the fourth night, Jimmy's mother took a turn. She waited until the children were asleep in the waiting room, until it was just Jimmy and his sister, and then she said, "I think it's time." "No," Jimmy said automatically. "Not yet, we just got here, we just started." "Baby," she said softly, "I've seen what I needed to see. You're going to be okay, both of you. You're going to take care of each other. You're going to be whole people, not just successful ones." She looked at Jimmy with such love it took his breath away. "Your friend Keanu," she said. "He gave you a gift, don't waste it." "I won't," Jimmy promised. "And that thing I needed to tell you," she said, her voice getting softer. "It wasn't about your father's music, that was just context. What I needed to tell you was this: you are not him, Jimmy. You are not me. You are not who we were afraid you'd become. You are exactly who you're supposed to be." Jimmy bent forward, kissed her forehead, whispered, "I love you, Mom." "I love you too, baby," she whispered back. "Now let me rest." She passed quietly at sunrise, Jimmy and his sister holding her hands, his wife and daughters in the doorway, peace on her face. The grief was immediate and overwhelming, but also clean, without regret, without words unsaid, without the terrible weight of missed chances. The funeral was small and beautiful. Keanu flew in, sat in the back, said nothing, but his presence said everything. Afterward, he found Jimmy outside the church. "You okay?" he asked. "No," Jimmy said honestly, "but I will be." Keanu nodded. "The show's yours again whenever you're ready, no pressure." Jimmy looked at him, this man who had appeared in his darkest moment with nothing but kindness. "Why did you do it, Keanu, all of it?" Keanu was quiet for a long moment, looking at the autumn trees. "Because when my daughter died, when Jennifer died, when River died, I learned that grief makes you part of a secret society. You recognize each other across rooms, across years, and the only rule is that when you see someone drowning, you throw them a rope." "Even if they're a stranger?" Jimmy asked. "Especially if they're a stranger," Keanu said. "Strangers don't have to love us, so when they choose to help anyway, it reminds us that humans are basically good, that kindness is our default. We just forget sometimes." 2 weeks later, Jimmy returned to The Tonight Show. The audience gave him a standing ovation before he said a word. He sat at his desk, looked into the camera, and spoke without cue cards. "My mom died 2 weeks ago," he said simply. "And I was there because Keanu Reeves gave me permission to be human instead of perfect. I want to give you that same permission." He paused, gathering himself. "We live in a world that tells us to be strong, to push through, to never show weakness. But my mom taught me something in her last days. She taught me that the bravest thing you can do is be honest about being broken, because that's how the light gets in." He looked at the audience, at his crew, at Sarah standing in the wings with tears streaming down her face. "So this show is going to be different now," he said. "We're still going to laugh. We're still going to play games, but we're also going to be real. We're going to talk about things that matter. We're going to remember that behind every celebrity and every audience member and every crew member is a human being carrying things we can't see." The audience erupted in applause again, and Jimmy felt his mother's presence like warm light. That night's guest was Keanu, who walked out to thunderous applause. They sat across from each other, and Jimmy said simply, "Thank you." Keanu smiled. "Thank you for letting me help." "You changed everything," Jimmy said. "No," Keanu replied gently. "You changed everything. I just held the door open while you walked through." Reflection. This story reminds us that kindness is not a small thing, it is the biggest thing. When Keanu Reeves saw Jimmy Fallon struggling, he didn't offer thoughts and prayers, he offered action. He gave up his time, his energy, his comfort to create space for someone else to be human. That single act of generosity rippled outward, touching Jimmy's family, the show's audience, millions of viewers who needed permission to be vulnerable too. The lesson here is not just about helping others, it's about recognizing that we all carry hidden pain, we all wear masks, we all perform versions of ourselves we think the world needs. But our truest connections come when we drop the performance and admit we need each other. Keanu understood that strength is not about standing alone, but about having the courage to catch others when they fall and the humility to let ourselves be caught. Jimmy learned that success without authentic connection is just sophisticated loneliness. His mother's death became not an ending but a transformation, teaching him that love doesn't require perfection, that showing up messy and scared and real is better than not showing up at all. The story shows us that sometimes the most profound gifts come from unexpected sources, that strangers can become angels, that one moment of genuine care can redirect an entire life. In the end, this is a story about the radical power of presence, the healing that comes from being seen, and the truth that we are all walking each other home. Keanu Reeves showed kindness not because Jimmy Fallon was ready, but precisely because he wasn't. And that makes all the difference.